Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's another weekend. Trust we have had a joining us from the rains fell for those of us in Lagos. So we are grateful that we get to see another opportunity to gather and learn. So welcome, Cohort XI. Please remember to put your name in the chat box. I see that we have started joining, but I only see 2 people who have written their names in the chat box, or how many? Okay. So please let's ensure we do this as soon as possible so that attendance can be taken right on time. Welcome once again. My name is Adishola. I will be your moderator for this evening's session. The Electoral College welcomes you. Today we will be looking at political parties and structure. Yesterday we had the benefit of having Shea Bella Ayeni join us, and she took us on the judiciary and their role in ensuring good governance. It was 2 hours of intensive lecture with questions, tons and tons of questions. And we had a beautiful time. We stretched our facilitator, but I'm sure we were the better for it. So today we have another interesting personality who will take us on this journey of political parties and their structures. It's just 5:01 or 17:01. We want to give some time for others to join, but hello, we that have come early should not be made to wait. So punctuality is key. So we'll start in earnest. And I'd like to read out the profile of our facilitator here today. Okay. Our facilitator to take us on political parties and structure is currently a public health and biosafety expert and a professional in politics with over 19 years working experience in the social sector to strengthen institutional reforms that can lead to social changes. He had led several student and youth movements and has been involved in various human rights advocacy. He was a former FCT interim chairman of the Alliance for New Nigeria Party, ANN, and it was under his leadership that the party built the structures at the local government levels and the ward levels before his ascension to the office of the national vice chairman of the same party for the South-South zone after its national convention in 2018. So you see that we have a guru and expert in the house on political parties and structure. So please, as I'm reading this bio, just begin to think about the many questions you have for him, how to set up a political party, how to ensure the structure, just ensure that your questions are well targeted so that we can, permit my language, utilize him as much as possible so that we can gain so much from him this evening. I continue. In this capacity as National Vice Chairman of the party for the South-South Zone, he served in several committees, prominent amongst which was the Security Committee, which he chaired, the Partnership Committee with other parties for the general elections in 2019. He was also a member of the National Campaign Council of the party and served as the South-South Zonal Director and Chairman of the National Campaign. He is a graduate of the University of Calabar and holds several certifications in his chosen field. He holds, in addition to this, a master's in business administration from the Ahmadu Bello University, and he is currently a PhD candidate in international public health. He is married and blessed with 3 lovely children. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Cohort XI, let's make welcome Mr. Ibiang Livinus, who is our facilitator for today. So please note, Mr. Ibiang would facilitate his session. Good evening, sir.
Shola,
For a couple of minutes.
Shola, sorry, let me interrupt.
Okay.
Before the ED's chairman should speak, the ED should be given permission to speak. And I
Okay.
think that there's so much about Mr. Livinus. He comes from a wealth of experience. He's someone that was an FCT chairman, overseeing time I ran for office before he like ascended, and I had to deal with, quite a funny FCT chairman. But that's another story for another day. He's a man of impeccable character and a gentleman, and someone who I look up to. He's still my chairman. I've told him he's always my chairman. And most importantly, he sacrificed for democracy in this country. He's one of the few that, are not on newspaper headlines, but, work behind the scenes and make things happen. I love to look at him like the engine oil of democracy. I think that would be the best definition. So it's a pleasure to welcome my chairman, Mr. Levinus again, to the 11th cohort. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Edie. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks, Deshola, for that citation. I want to thank you, Edie, for yet another opportunity to share my modest experience in political party management and structure. It's always a pleasure to share some of this experience with folks, and because this is important for us to be educated to the point where we are able to hold government to account. And I'd just like to give an intro in the words of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who is a Genevan philosopher and a political thinker. It's important to know that Rousseau's political thoughts influenced what we call the Age of Enlightenment throughout Europe, as well as aspects of the French Revolution, as it were, at the time, and the development of modern economic, political, and educational thoughts. And this is important because it is the reason why the Electoral College was established. And Rousseau believed that good government must have the freedom of all its citizens as its fundamental objective. So every government must have central to its objective the freedom of all its citizens, not some. And it's important for us to know this. And as you may have, as some of you may have known, what we today know as a social contract, which is the contract between the governed and those who govern, was propounded by Rousseau. And what was it that formed the main crux of this contract? And these are some of the things that Rousseau had in mind, that man is born free and he is everywhere in chains, and that people could only experience true freedom if they live in a society that ensured, and mark the word, ensured, the rights and well-being of its citizens. It is only on these thoughts that we can actually say we have a social contract between the citizens or the governed and the government. And to tell you why this is very fundamental, I dare quote the words of Thomas Jefferson, who was one time the president of the United States and who made a historical declaration in 1776. 1776. And he said, and I quote, that I hold this truth to be sacred, that all men are born equal and imbued with certain inalienable rights, amongst which are the rights to freedom of speech, the right to freedom of expression, and all the rights that you can ever imagine or think about, which are enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That right is to ensure that what Rousseau thought about way back then is actually guaranteed. It is on this basis, on this whole premises, that I want us to view the whole ideology behind political parties and their structure, because they provide the platform and mechanism for participation in the government of society or of a nation state or country. Having said that, let me delve into the subject of today. Before I do that, I want to congratulate this 11 cohort for the rare privilege and opportunity that you all have to actually learn. You've been listening to very amazing speakers, because I know the Electoral College had actually mobilized a lot of very intelligent speakers who have been speaking to us from the inception of this particular cohort. So today we'll be looking at political parties and structures, and I congratulate and welcome you once again. Now, having said this, it's important to know that political parties are basically very fundamental to every democratic process. And there can never be any democracy without political parties, because democracy requires an organized structure or platform to actually make it happen. And this structure, this organized structure, is what political parties are. So democracy, of course, is a form of government. And I know everyone here can actually define what democracy is all about. The government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And please, anytime you think about that definition of democracy, underline the core elements of that definition. The people, the people, the people. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Underline it, because it is from there you will be drawing the inspiration and the basis for your political and social engagement in the governance or the affairs of the governance of our country or local government or states. Political parties are platforms through which power is contested, because you cannot stand as an individual to contest for political position, as it were, based on our current law or legislations. So the only way you can do that is through political platform. And I must tell you, there are historical bases to what we today know as political parties. And this dates as far back as the British colonial era of our country. And we had people like Herbert Macaulay, the grandson of, Bishop Ajayi Crowther. I'm sure some of you who did history would have heard of that name, Ajayi Crowther. Formed the first political party, which was the Nigerian National Democratic Party, way back in the early 1922. So these are some very important historical facts just to help us lay the foundation for this discussion. We have what we call the development of political parties in Nigeria, which of course, like I said, dates way back to 1922, when the Nigerian National Democratic Party was launched. And then came, of course, the establishment of what we call the Nigeria Legislative Council to provide some political space for the participation of indigenes, that is Nigerians. Remember, that period was the colonial era, where we had the colonial masters who were administering all of the protectorates which have been amalgamated in the year 1914 as one single entity. So it was largely manned by the colonial masters. But the Legislative Council was established to allow for participation of Nigerians in the affairs of the governance of the country. However, franchise was limited to just 2 cities, which were they were then originally protectorates of Lagos, and Calabar. But a more vigorous process of party formation was initiated with the formation of the Nigerian Youth Movement in 1938. That brought some vibrancy within the political space, and then the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons in 1944, still under the leadership of Herbert Macaulay. Of course, we had the Action Group, which emerged in 1948, while the Northern People's Congress was established in 1951. These political parties constituted themselves as political expressions of ethno-regional associations, with the Action Group in the West evolving from the Yoruba Cultural Association called the Egbe Omo Odudua. And then we also had the Northern People's Congress evolving from the Northern Cultural Association, that is the Jamia Mutanen Arewa, and we had the National Congress of Nigerian Citizens, which started as a national party, but later narrowed its base to a cultural association, the Igbo States Union of the Southeast. If you look at the way these structures had evolved to a point where they were regionalized around this time, you would draw some, congruence with what is currently the case in the recent elections that happened in Nigeria. I'm sure you can connect. You can see that there is a pattern that has evolved. This pattern is not new to political scientists and historians because it has existed before. Now let's see what happened at the time. These ethno-regional elite blocs struggled against each other in configuring the politics of the First Republic as a contest for hegemony by the elites of the major ethnic platforms, the Hausa Fulani, Yoruba, and the Igbos. And then there is a marginalization of the minority groups. Don't forget, Nigeria prides itself of several nationalities. Several, so many, but there are just 3 dominant ethnic groups in Nigeria, which form the 3 critical blocks: the Hausa Fulani, the Yorubas, and then the Igbos. But there are others. That's why I said or referred to them as the marginalized minority groups. Now, some sort of power sharing was very eminent in the First Republic. So during the 1959 elections, no single party was able to win majority, no single party. The MPC then decided to combine with the NCNC to form the national government. So you see, there was alliance at the time. This brought Abubakar Tafawa Balewa in as the prime minister and Nnamdi Azikiwe as the governor general on Independence Day in 1960. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe later became the first president of Nigeria in 1963, after Nigeria became a republic, while Tafawa Balewa maintained his position as the prime minister. Now something happened. There was massive electoral fraud in an election that took place in 1964 and 1965. So in 1965, all of that commotion precipitated a political crisis that led to the collapse of what we call the First Republic. And the dissatisfaction in the system led to the splitting, again, of the NCNC and the MPC. What then happened? there were some realignments of political parties as a result of the disagreement. So the NCNC joined forces with a faction of the Action Group led by Chief Obafemi Awolowo to form what was to be known as the United Progressive Grind Alliance, UPGA, while the Northern People's Congress, NPC, on the other hand, joined forces with the remaining faction of the Action Group led by Samuel Ladoke Akintola to form the Nigerian National Democratic Party. And then the Civil War broke, and we saw the entry of the military into Nigerian politics, Nigerians' political space. As a result of that inroad made by the military, witnessed significant changes in the evolution of political parties. Now, that period lasted from 1967 to 1970. And that's why I tagged that as a blackout. It was a blackout to democracy and democratic process because of the Civil War. Now, there were political developments in what became the Second Republic. But in the run-up to the Second Republic, 150 political parties were announced. About 50 of them were fully constituted as parties. That is, they met the laid down requirements to be truly addressed or known as political parties. Again, only 18 of these 50 were able to feel that they had any chance of meeting the imposed conditions and submitted their applications. So the states recognized only 5 of them in 1978, and they are the National Party of Nigeria, NPN, Unity Party of Nigeria, UPN, the Nigerian People's Party, NPP, the People's Redemption Party, PRP, and the Great Nigeria People's Party, GNPP. Now, we had the 1979 Constitution, which banned independent candidates from contesting elections and outlawed regional, ethnic, religious, and extremist parties because the state wanted to have truly national parties, parties that have national spread, okay? So that was why it outlawed many others that did not meet that critical criteria. Now let's see some developments that took place. So one dominant party emerged from the transition process in 1978, and that's the National Party of Nigeria, NPN, with roots in the regional politics of the First Republic. The founding fathers of NPN systematically waxed a coalition from the segmented and disparate fractions that constituted the Nigerian political class. So you can see that building a truly national political party requires a lot in terms of engaging, mobilizing, and identifying critical stakeholders to form a truly national political party. All the efforts towards a hegemonic party did not bear much fruit. However, the 1979 elections revealed that the political parties retained strong regional bases and ended up sharing the votes without any of them completely dominating the others. I'm talking about the 5 that were approved to truly stand out as political parties. Ideological politics was stronger with the People's Redemption Party, which was an offshoot of NEPU, Northern Element Progressive Union, and the Unity Party of Nigeria, which was an offshoot of the Action Group. Both parties were said to be on the left, while the other 3 parties were on the right. And then we had the blackout again in 1983 to 1985. This blackout was largely because of the coup that was, that took place and which brought in Major General Muhammadu Buhari, who is the current president of Nigeria. So it was a coup against the government of Alhaji Aliyu Shehu Shagari, who was the then president and had, ran for a second term in office before the coup happened. And in 1985, we had another coup that toppled Muhammadu Buhari. That coup was led by General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, who is also currently alive and is there in his Mina Hilltop mansion. So he led the country first as head of state and later as military president until 1993, when he stepped aside for an interim national government, which was headed by Chief Ernest Shonekan. And that period marked the beginning of the Third Republic that never was witnessed, such a flurry of activities that took place. The Third Republic Constitution was drafted in 1989. There were establishment of new political parties, of course, which were later banned by Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. And his government then established only two political parties, which were the Social Democratic Party, SDP, which was, of course, seen to be slightly to the left, and the National Republican Convention, NRC, which was considered to be slightly to the right. When elections were held in 1993, and Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola of the Social Democratic Party won that election, which is usually regarded as the June 12th, election of 1993. Babangida annulled that election, and this precipitated the collapse of the Third Republic before it even took off. Now, we witnessed another blackout. Don't forget, when Babangida stepped aside, he constituted what was an aberration. Aberration because it was not recognized by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that was setting up what we call interim national government, headed by Chief Ernest Shonekan. That government was not an elected government. It was merely constituted by the military government. And this was largely because of the urgency to step aside, because of the unrest and civil agitation that followed. But even the government, the interim national government itself, was not favored because there were several litigations against the government in view of illegitimacy, because it was something foreign to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So we had a situation where the Secretary of Defense, who of course happened to be the highest ranking military officer in the person of General Sani Abacha, did what they call a palace coup and overthrew the government, the interim national government headed by Chief Ernest Shonekan, and took over the reins of power and governed from 1993 to 1998. General Sani Abacha died sometime in June of 1998. And following his death, we had General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who ascended into office as the head of state and then ruled until 1999. So he midwifed a transition period that saw the birth of what we call the Fourth Republic. So as of today, we are still in the Fourth Republic. So the Fourth Republic was initiated through the 1999 Constitution, which we currently have as amended. And for its first election, the Independent National Electoral Commission recognized only 3 political parties at the time. And these were the People's Democratic Party, which is still in existence, the All People's Party, and the Action for Democracy, AD. I'm sure some of you who are historians or political scientists would have heard of all of these parties. Now, following a Supreme Court judgment on the case of Balarabe Musa versus INEC on the conditions for registration of political parties, there was a liberalization of the political space. And subsequently, Nigeria's political space witnessed an unprecedented opening with the emergence of 63 registered political parties in April of 2011. Balarabe Musa filed a suit, against the limitation posed by INEC as to the number of political parties that could exist. And he said the formation of political parties ought to be, free and open for individuals or group of people to actually have political parties. And they won that case in court. And that was why we had the expansion within the political space that accommodated additional political parties to be formed. Prominent among the new political parties are the Action Congress of Nigeria, the Congress for Political Change, and that is CPC, and the People's Progressive Alliance. And of course, if you had followed the political trend, you know that the CPC used to be the General Muhammadu Buhari's political party, which was, of course, fused with other political parties like ACN and some factions of ABGA and APP to form what we today have as the APC. In addition, many small parties took advantage of the liberalization of the political space to register parties that have proven to be unviable, but meant to be vehicles through which INEC's funding support to parties could be cornered. And if, for those who were very conversant with that era, there was a time, very interesting period really, when INEC used to fund political parties. In fact, it was a policy of government to support political parties to operate within the liberalized political space. So you find a lot of briefcase political parties, which were used to access government funding for political parties. And then, after elections, these political parties just fizzle out. They just disappear and wait for the next cycle of elections. And then you see them again, pop up and make a lot of noise within the political space, all so that they're able to access this funding, So it was very interesting era in our polity at the time. So in order to promote credible elections with the existence of strong political parties, Section 78(6) of the 2010 Electoral Act provided INEC with the powers to deregister any political party that failed to win any executive and legislative seats in elections. Of course, at the time, it was, it was imperative to have such a law because political parties, like I said, existed basically to access funds. So INEC thought that it will be wise to have political parties utilize those resources or funds to actually mobilize citizens to vote for these parties to come into power. Because in their thinking, any party that failed to participate in elections, is not a serious party and should not be allowed to exist. This was the reason behind the INEC, the law that empowered INEC to actually deregister this political party. So on the 18th of August, 2011, INEC deregistered 7 political parties, 7, that did not contest for any elective office in the 2011 elections. They are the Democratic Alternative, National Action Council, National Democratic Liberal Party, Masses Movement of Nigeria, Nigerian People's Congress, Nigeria Elements Progressive Party, and the National Unity Party. And this was contained in the Daily Trust newspaper of August 19, 2011, page 3. So if you could refer to that, you'll see a list of the parties that were deregistered by INEC at the time. INEC also announced its intention to deregister more political parties as soon as the numerous court cases by some of the political parties were determined. Don't forget, there were leges, and some of these political parties want to assess those leges. And so they went to court to stop INEC from deregistering them so that they can continue to be in existence. The INEC was saying that no, we can only fund serious political parties that are involved in elections. So at the end of 2012, an additional 31 political parties were deregistered, leaving only 27 registered political parties. A full list of recently deregistered political parties and the currently registered parties was also attached in Appendix 6. Now, take a breather because we want to now analyze what we call the political landscape and system of Nigeria. There are numerous stakeholders within the Nigerian political landscape, numerous, so many. And who are these stakeholders? They include politicians, political parties, political movements, that is association of people who have not yet become political parties. We have electoral systems, we have electoral umpires, we have anti-corruption crusaders, we have the electorates, we have judiciary, we have legislative, we have executives, we have the traditional religious and institutions. We have pressure groups like labor, we have civil society organizations, and we have what we call situation rooms. The situation rooms, of course, as you all know, monitor electoral processes and also conduct what we call political enlightenment. And then we have more recently what we call technoticians, because these are a group of people who are technocrats, but who had ventured into, politics for reasons of providing alternate ideologies towards good governance in Nigeria. All of these critical stakeholders serve to deepen political culture and form the political structure via which government is served, or governance is served. I beg your pardon. So, and that's why I'm saying the political education that the Electoral College is availing to teeming Nigerians is basically to deepen our political culture and form the political structure via which governance is served to the people of Nigeria. That means we have a duty as citizens. We have a responsibility to hold government to account. That's our civic responsibility, or it is our civic responsibility because there are lots of other civic responsibilities that we have, including participation in the election of those that will govern us, including payment of taxes, holding government to account, contributing to political and legislative debates, because for laws to be made, the legislature organizes what we call public hearing. These public hearings are geared towards harnessing and harvesting ideas from the public in the formation of healthy policy for the good governance of Nigeria. So, political parties, we've been talking about political parties. Of course, I've alluded to the fact that political parties are basically an organized political platforms. So political parties is defined as an organized group of people with at least roughly similar political aims and opinions. That is to say, they have similar political ideologies that seeks to influence public policy by getting its candidates elected to public office. And we can truly see this in the case of the dominant political parties we have today and others that, of course, participated in this year's elections. We talk about the NNPP, we talk about the Labour Party, we talk about PDP, APC, but then there are others like ADC, so many of them, so numerous, okay? All of them seek to influence public policy by getting their candidates elected. Recall, the Labour Party says they want to, move the country from consumption to production. The APC initially started with change, okay? And now they want to do, they said they want renewed to inspire renewed hope. Renewed hope. The PDP said they want to make Nigeria working again, and so on and so forth. So there are different ideologies, and there are people who are aligned with this, and I'm sure some of us aligned with some of these ideologies. So parties are deeply and durably entrenched in specific substructures of society for purposes of sustaining a well-functioning democracy. And political parties also link governmental institutions to the elements of the civil society in a free and fair society, and they are also necessary for the functioning of any modern democratic political system. These are largely why political parties exist. However, I have some sort of concern. In spite of these fundamental elements that have defined political parties, okay? A lot of persons will tell you, or parties will tell you, we seek political power so that we can serve the people. And I find a lot of paradox in this whole claim. How on earth do you want to serve a people and yet subject the people to certain level of degradation? It's a big question, and I want us to introspect and think about this. And then you can actually say whether these core elements, these three elements we have defined here, truly define the basis for political parties. Now, again, political parties, like I said, is defined as organized group of people with at least roughly similar political aims and opinions that seek to influence public policy by getting its candidates elected to public office. And we've talked about how they are entrenched, purposes of, sustainability and all of that. Now, what do political parties do? They basically solicit and articulate public policy priorities, civic needs, and problems, because political parties come to us to tell us that they understand what our needs and problems are, that they understand what public policy priorities that should be in place to guarantee that our civic needs and problems are addressed. What other things do political parties do? They socialize, they educate voters and citizens in the functioning of the political and electoral system and the generation of general political values. How much of these first two bullets that we have seen still remains a question that I'm sure many would like to have answers to, and I'm sure we can truly connect with all of this. 3, balancing opposing demands and converting them into general policy. What do I mean? Any political party in power must have significant room to accommodate opposing perspectives. That is, it must accommodate opposition. and learn to utilize the opposing ideologies or perspectives of other political parties into general policies that can bring about the attainment of civic needs of the people. This is why political parties in power must be accommodating, must have room to accommodate opposing opinion. Political parties also serve to activate and mobilize citizens to participate in political decision-making and transform opinions into viable policy options that will meet the need of the people. They also serve as a channel for, harnessing public opinion into government so that the government can utilize those public opinion into making policies for the good governance of the state. And finally, to recruit and train candidates for public office. I'm sure you can agree with me that so many people in government offices do not have business being in those offices that they occupy. And the simple reason is that for the fact that we are not getting the dividends of democracy is underscored by the fact that people who occupy government offices do not have any business being in those offices. And of course, many of us know how these people get into office, by hook and crook. And at the end of the day, they do not serve the people. They serve themselves. And if you look at the policies that they make, they are largely such that favors them. I'm sure a lot of us would have been aware of what have been watched in the media and social media of one of the governors who had sent a memo to the state's legislature for approval to procure vehicles and other personal effects worth over 2 billion naira. 2 billion for an individual as parting gift. That's one. We also have state governors that have made laws that gives them or guarantees them what they call a pension in the region of hundreds of millions of naira. Hundreds of millions of naira. We have some states, I don't want to mention names, but I'm sure we can do some further research that claim around 500 to 700 million naira for an individual for serving for only 8 years. And yet, we have some of our parents, uncles, brothers who have served in the public service of this country for more than 30-something years and retired to a pension of less than 100,000. So you can see why I said some people who are in government and hold public offices do not have business being in those offices. There are operational imperatives that underline the management of political parties. So to perform all of these functions of soliciting and articulating public policy, socializing and educating voters and citizens, balancing opinions, opposing demands, and converting them into general policies, activate and mobilize citizens, channel public opinion from citizen to government, recruit and train candidates for public offices. To be able to do all of this, political parties and citizens need some rights and obligations guaranteed or ruled by constitution or law. And these include the freedom of organization. Remember, when I started, I gave some background to the political philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who, of course, laid the foundation for the social contract that we now know. And part of the elements of that social contract is freedom, the freedom of the citizens. Okay? Remember, he said, man is born free and is everywhere in chains, and that people could only experience true freedom if they live in a society that guaranteed their rights. And these rights include the rights to freedom of organization, the rights of freedom to stand for election, rights of freedom of speech and assembly, provision of a fair and peaceful competition among political parties and candidates. And I'm underlining this because the crux of the litigations we have in the presidential election petition tribunals and the governorship tribunals and the legislative tribunals is because there is no fair and peaceful competition. But these are operational imperatives that must be guaranteed within the political space for the people to say we were truly free in choosing who our leaders should be. What other political operational imperatives? Mechanism to ensure plurality, inclusion in the electoral process, and contacts with electoral bodies, and then providing a level playing field and freedom from discrimination. That is to say, if you are a Yoruba man living in the Southeast, nobody in the Southeast should discriminate against you for being a Yoruba and resident in the Southeast during elections. And if you are an Igbo man living in Lagos or the North, nobody should discriminate against you. These are operational imperatives, operational imperatives. So media must have access and fair reporting must be guaranteed. There has to be transparent and accountable political financing. This was the reason the government decided to impromptu redesign the Nigerian currency, which of course led to a lot of hardship because it was concerned that certain political parties might utilize monies that have been stashed somewhere, which cannot be accounted for in influencing the electoral process. So these are operational imperatives that has to be in place. Political parties are essential institutions of democracy, like I said. They compete in elections, and in opposition, they can hold governments accountable. When citizens join political parties, they volunteer their time, donate money and other resources, vote for their leaders, and they are exercising their basic democratic rights. When I was chairman of the party here in FCT, we had people who were donating even structures like houses for us to use as party offices for the local governments so that we can have structures within the local governments. We have those who are used donating their properties at the ward level so that we can have political party structures at the ward level, and so on and so forth. So individuals contribute because there is a popular saying that you put your money where your what is it your mouth is. Okay, so participation of citizens in political parties offers unique benefits, which include influencing policy choices, choose and engage political leaders, and run for office as well. However, in so many countries, political parties do not respect the rights of citizens to participate and are not accountable to voters. And you can see that these are some of the things you have within our political space. where candidates are imposed on the political parties because they have the resources to buy the political leadership, and as such, they are imposed on other members of the political party. Of course, if you look at the current lobbying taking place at the National Assembly amongst those that have been elected, the newly elected legislatures, you will see that the party is proposing some candidates for the leadership position in the National Assembly, whereas the members-elect are saying that, no, we will have a say because we are the ones that will vote. We want to have a say, not just the party imposing some people on us. So these are some of the nuances you have out there. And it's very important for us to have a grasp of all of these so that we can understand and appreciate how political parties are meant to operate. Political parties are guided in its structure and function by the following. There are constitution and manifestos, codes of conduct for members, conventions, which of course are previous agreements, resolutions of the party, regulations made by the party, organs, party standing rules, and extant guidelines. You have what you call the customs, that is culture, procedures, practices, e.g. consensus, as it were. And then you also have judicial pronouncements. Judicial pronouncements are also basis for the functioning of the political parties. And it's important for us to understand, especially for those of us who are students of law, that judicial pronouncements also form parts of our legal jurisprudence as a country. And then we have electoral laws, which of course provides how parties should exist and how party activity should be conducted. And then you have the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which of course guarantees the existence of political parties. Now, what are these structures of political parties? We've talked about political party formation, their historical basis, and the organization and reorganization of political parties within the political space. Now, what are structures? We always hear people talk about structures of political parties. There are critical structures of political party. I may not go through all of them, but I'm sure the Electoral College will avail you with this presentation so that you can take your time to look at them. But just to mention that these are some of the structures of the party. We have what we call the World Executive Committee. We have the World Congress, the Local Government Executive Committee. We have the Local Government Area Congress. We have the Senatorial District Executive Committee. We have the Senatorial Congress. We have the State Working Committee. We have the State Executive Committee. We have the State Congress. We have the Zonal Working Committee. We have the Zonal Executive Committee. We have the Zonal Congress. We have the National Working Committee. We have the National Executive Committee. We have the Board of Trustees. We have the National Caucus. We have the National Convention. All of these are called structures of the party. Why do they exist? They exist for the organization, coordination, and for the functioning of the political party. And that's why they are very important. Now, I will just look at functions of a few of these structures. For the World Executive Committee, what is their function? Basically, the administration of the party at the world level, raising funds, membership drive, drawing up strategies for political campaigns, mobilizing voters for the party, implementing decisions of the World Congress and other organs of the party, receiving the World Auditor Report, and performing such other functions as may be in the interest of the party and as may from time to time be assigned to it by higher organs of the party. What of the World Congress? First, the World Congress is composed of all elected political office holders and registered members of the party. and they meet once a year. What is their function? They receive reports of officers of the ward, receive auditors' report, approve the budget of the ward, elect members of the ward executive committee, elect ward delegates to the party congress, conduct primaries for the ward elections, carry out such other functions as may be in the interest of the party. As you can see from these functions, you will agree with me that the Congress is supreme. The Congress is higher than the executive. But then, let's not confuse it. The executive manage the day-to-day operations of the party. The World Congress meets once a year. They serve like as the legislative organ of the party at the world level. That's why I said they are superior to the world executive because of the functions that it performs. What about the local government executive committee? What is their function? This includes administration of the party at the local government level, raising fund, membership, all the other functions that we have identified for the world executive. They also identify and resolve political, social, and economic issues of concern to local government, receive and implement reports from ward on membership, fundraising strategies for political campaign, electoral success, and mobilization of voters. They provide strategies for effective communication between wards and the local government and perform such other functions as may be in the interest of the party and as may from time to time be assigned to it by higher organs of the party. What is the composition? The local government party chairman and other members of the local government area executive committee. This is the composition of the local government Congress, okay, as opposed to the executive. Now, the Congress at the local government also include the national, zonal, and state executive committee members of the party from the local government area, the elected local government council chairman, vice chairman, councillors who are members of the party, all members of the National and State House of Assembly from the local government area who are members of the party, members of the Board of Trustees from the local government area, all chairmen and secretaries of ward executive committee from the local government area, and then 3 delegates from each ward of the local government area elected at the World Congress, at least one of whom shall be a woman, all of whom shall cease to function at the conclusion of Congress for which they were elected. Now you can see that this is a much larger platform, and again, is superior to the local government area executive because it has more representation, you know, in its structure. Now I'll move from here to look at, because of time, other structures of the party, especially at the state level. You have what you call the state caucus, you have the state elders committee, the state executive committee, the state party congress, the state assembly congress, the House of Representatives Congress, and the senatorial district congress. And each of these have their function. It is of note that the state party congress, okay, elects officers of the state executive committee. And the state party congress elects the governorship candidate of the party. It is at the state party congress that the governorship candidate of the party emerges. Now, we have what we call the National Working Committee at the national level, and this is made up of elected officers of the party at the national level, from the national chairman down to the national youth leader, as we can see here, all make up what we call the National Working Committee. And their function is no less different from what we had for the World Local Government and State Working Committee. But then there are additional, because These ones function at the national level, okay? So we have the National Working Committee, and they have their functions very well inscribed for them, depending on the party, So what we have here may be different for different political parties, but all of them have a National Working Committee. Of course, there is the National Caucus, and they also have their functions and compositions. We have the Legislative Caucus, and I just want to dwell a little bit on the National Legislative Caucus. The National Legislative Caucus exists within the National Assembly. So when you hear the Legislative Caucus, you have the Senate Caucus for all the political parties. So every political party, like APC, have a National Legislative Caucus. PDP has, which other party? Now we will be having Labour Party. We have the, what's the other party? We have APC, we have PDP, we have Labour Party, we have NNPP. So all of these parties will have what you call the Legislative Caucus. The Legislative Caucus represents the interest of the party within the national legislature. So for any decision to be made, they coordinate the decisions, the views and perspectives of their various political parties within the national legislative houses to make sure that the interest of the people that they represent is also served. So their functions include choosing floor leaders and presiding officers, because those who emerge as leaders of the National Assembly are usually emerge through this legislative caucus, because the power sharing is such that the caucuses of the parties actually determine who represents them within the leadership of the party in the National Assembly. So they formulate party position regarding bills, wider policy principles in specialized party committees before they are introduced into Parliament. They identify different and distinctive interests and wings in the party group and harmonize those views in order to better serve the interests of the people. They deliberate among political party members and canvass for support from other political parties in ensuring that the ideologies are actually passed as laws on the floor of the House. And this they do by persuading political party members from other parties. Now, remember we talked about the National Working Committee. We also have what we call the NEC. The NEC is the National Executive Committee, and it is bigger than the National Working Committee. So the NEC is higher in terms of authority as compared to the National Working Committee. And it has its own composition in terms of, membership, which is bigger. And then, of course, it has its functions. And we also have the Board of Trustees, which is like the conscience of the party. We have also the composition of the Board of Trustees, and they have their own functions as well. And then we have what you call the National Convention. The National Convention is the supreme organ of all the parties. Irrespective of the party that exists, there is a National Convention, which is the supreme organ and which makes laws for the political party. It is at the National Conventions that the officers of the party are elected at the national level. It is at the National Convention that the presidential candidate of the party is also elected. That is why it is very important. And the National Convention makes legislations or laws for the governance of the party. The National Convention has its own composition, and it also has its function, which are circumscribed here as well. Due to time constraints, we may not be able to go into all of that, but I'm assured that this presentation will be made available to you by the Electoral College so that you can, further use this as a resource in addition to other studies or research that you may want to conduct for better understanding of the part structures of the party. So these are all functions, structures of a political party. And it's also important to note that the National Convention has its own function, which is also circumscribed here. Amongst all this, we also have partnerships, we have mergers, we have coalitions, which may not necessarily be political parties per se. For instance, you have the CUPP, which is a coalition of united political parties. So you have coalitions and we have mergers, we have partnerships. Of course, you recall that during the elections, some political parties went into partnerships so that, they're able to mobilize and, synchronize their resources towards the elections and for the purpose of winning political power so that they can become the dominant party. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the structures of political parties, and we now understand what political parties are and what constitute the structures of these political parties. It's important to note that all of these structures exist at different levels. That's why I took time to go through the ward, the local government, the state, in fact, even the senatorial district. That's why we have the senatorial district congresses, the House of Representative district congresses, and so on and so forth. So they exist at different levels. And at the community level, you also have the World Congress relating and aligning with community-based organizations and other organizations like women organizations, youth organizations, and so on and so forth that exist at the community level, including traditional institutions for purposes of mobilizing and canvassing views and perspectives that will further entrench the interests of their political parties at the community level. And so with this, I would like to stop here. So these are some of the reference materials with the Wikipedia, INEC, capacity assessment of Nigerian political parties by Lewis and J. Ibrahim, and of course the Alliance for New Nigeria Political Party Constitution, which provided greater resource insights into some of the contents of this presentation. So once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity and for your active participation. Thank you, and over to you, Adeshola.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Wow, 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 wow. Wow. It has been 1 hour of intense lectures. And we'd like to take questions now. One thing I'm particularly grateful for all that I heard today is the fact that these structures exist at various levels. And truly, if we begin to engage these things, then we would see just how important they are. Okay, okay, I'm just trying to look through. Okay, I have Amadine Ogbere. Okay. So I will tell you to please unmute and ask your questions. Please, let's keep it down to about a minute or less. No dilly-dallying, no long story. Please just ask your questions quickly. Thank you. Amadine, go ahead.
The completion of the party. For instance, the party says, or throughout the news cycle, CDP has done.
Hello, Amadine, are you speaking?
Yes. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Hello. Hello. Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you now. It's better. It was muffled before.
All right. So I was asking. I said, to what extent can political parties be held to their own constitutions or their own rules I take, for instance, throughout the news cycle, we kept hearing that PDP has zoning in its constitution, and yet the PDP people themselves didn't seem beholden to those rules. It was like, okay, we will make a committee, a zoning committee, we'll see what happens, and then we'll decide, you know. So I'm just saying, to what extent can someone say you have to follow what is in your constitution? And then also the issue of removing national chairmen is becoming quite a pandemic, and it seems like all you have to do is go to, you know, the local or the ward level of that chairman, and they're out, and the courts just always let it happen. I wonder if that's supposed to be so, that any national chairman who the ward level members have issues with can simply be removed in that manner. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, 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 very important and very intelligent question. I truly, and the party constitutions do not exist as instruments to be toyed or played with. The party's constitution is the ground norm. It is the legal basis for which the parties function. And the party constitution is supreme for that political parties. This, according to one of our political leaders in the country, says is the rascality in the system. When people flout their constitution, which they strongly swore to uphold, it is only based on rascality. The constitution is meant to be respected and followed stricto sensu. There is absolutely no reason why such should not be followed. And one of the things that happen when the rule of law is flouted is that you have chaos and anarchy. Did you see that? I'm sure we all saw that. So in any party where you have the constitution not being followed, you definitely will have chaos and anarchy. And that's actually what occasioned most of the political parties whose members or some of its members failed to honor or follow the provisions of the constitution of the party. The other question as to the flagrant suspension of national party chairmen, this is actually strange. And it is largely derived from the fact that politics is local. So every member of a political party is expected to go to his ward and register. And you are first a member of the political party at your ward level before whatever you become at the national level. And that's why it's you find a situation where the national chairmen of parties who are suspended from the party at the ward level are removed from office, because what happens is that once there is a resolution at the ward level which is transmitted to the national working committee of the party, then that seals the fate of the chairman, national chairman of that party. However, some party constitution make it very clear how the national chairman of any party has to be removed. That it is only through the national convention of the party that a national chairman can be removed. Where such is enshrined in the constitution of a party, then you have a stalemate. And I can give you, I'm sure you've seen what is happening within the Labour Party. We also had the case of Adam Soshomole at the time, who was the national chairman of the APC, that was removed because the party at this ward level had suspended him. We had the case of the PDP in the person of Chief Prince Uche Secondus, who was also removed at the ward level, and as a result of which was, lost his seat at the national level. Because what happens is that the matter goes to court, and because there is a resolution at the ward level, okay, there is a litigation in court that inspires litigation in court that that person is not fit to continue to remain in office as the chairman. But what is most fundamental in all of this is the fact that the resolution to remove or suspend a chairman is usually predicated on something. That thing becomes the matter in issue in the courts when the matter is being litigated. So there is a whole lot of confusion, and I must tell you, parties will definitely evolve certain clauses within their constitution to forestall the gale of suspension of national chairmen, as we are seeing today in the political space. So there is a whole lot of uncertainty around this whole thing, unless the constitution of the party clearly defines how the chairman can be removed before we can have a break from all of the kind of happenings we are seeing in the political parties. But I must admit that this is a very disturbing situation. Over.
Okay, sir. Before you take the next question, there's a question. Let me just say like a follow-up question in the chat box. So if you can just answer that before I call the next person. The question is, political parties have their constitutions and laws guiding their parties, and in such laws, there are penalties for erring members. Does the courts have powers to stop a political party from sanctioning members that have defaulted?
The question to that is no.
No, I was about to say the same thing.
The political parties have evolved mechanisms for discipline and penalties of erring members of the party. That is purely constitutional. And that is why you see our judiciary had lent itself to the manipulations of politicians. There are matters for which some of the courts do not have jurisdiction over. That is why when once a matter goes to court, the first question is to interrogate, okay, the jurisdiction of that court to hear such a matter, because certain matters are matters for which the political parties have powers to legislate over, have powers to actually exercise within its purview in guaranteeing the safe and smooth running of the party. So the answer to your question is just a no. Over.
Thank you, sir. Moses, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ibiang. Good evening, everybody. I have two questions. The first question is this. In a situation where we have this so much political rascality going on with our political parties, do we need an agency of government to now start policing political parties and their activities? That is one. Then secondly, how do we manage cases where governments or political parties in power use the resources of government, such as state-owned media houses, for their own activities, trying to deny other political parties? How do we manage situations like that to ensure a level playing ground for everybody?
Thank you. Dealing with issues of political rascality, the truth is that political parties, by the laws that guarantee their existence, have inbuilt mechanisms already. The other institution of government that is mandated to provide guidance to the functions and functionality of political party is INEC. Because INEC guarantees their registration, and it guarantees their registration in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution and its extant laws, by making sure that the political parties meet certain criteria for registration. That gives some sense of policing in ensuring how the political parties should be managed. For instance, there has never been a time while I was in office as a party chairman that we're going to have a meeting of the party that we don't invite INEC. INEC is always invited, whether at the state level or at the national level. We always extend an invitation to INEC to observe the proceedings. And this is very important, because when certain matters arise, you find situations where matters will indicate that INEC was at such meetings as an observer. And people could defer to INEC to say, did you actually monitor this meeting? And when certain things are done in contravention to the provisions of the constitution of the party, INEC can make certain pronouncements within its powers. It can provide certain guidance to the party to say, look, this will be in contravention to the regulations of INEC with respect to functioning of the political party. So there is enough mechanism in place to ensure that political parties are properly governed and properly policed. Policed in the sense that every political party has structures. Remember, we talked about the board of trustees. The board of trustees in most political parties serve as the conscience of the party for mediation and reconciliation between party officers, party organs, and so on and so forth. There is a disciplinary committee of the party, which of course is established for purpose of meting out justice to individuals who are considered to have erred or be in contravention of the provisions of the party. With respect to political parties in power, denying other political parties of public utilities or infrastructure, this is wrong. And this is happening because we do not have strong institutions. You can't imagine a situation where a Democratic Party in the United States will deny the Republican Party of a state facility. It can't happen because there are state institutions that are strong and can ensure that everybody have access to the same resources. So it is clearly a question of weak institutions, because what we have in Nigeria is strong individuals and not strong institutions. So that is why we are receiving the kind of education we are receiving today, the kind of enlightenment we are receiving today, so that we can all become part of the governance of Nigeria. Because when the people are aware, when the people are conscious and politically educated and sagacious, they're able to hold government to account, to say, no, you can't do that. Every political party, whether in opposition, must have access to the resources, infrastructure, public utilities, and not just the ruling party in place. So it's a function of strong institutions we do not have. You can imagine a malleable House of Assembly that can approve for a governor to take on 2 billion. You can imagine having a National Assembly that is malleable to the executive. that is more or less subservient and at the whims and caprices of the president, it means that the people will suffer. That is why the three arms of government are on the same levers: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. No one arm of government is superior to the other. No, they are on a balance. The legislature exists to checkmate the executive. The judiciary exists to checkmate the legislature and make sure that none of the arms of government acts ultra vires beyond their powers. That is why the executive is the executor. The legislature makes the laws for the executive to implement, while the judiciary interprets the laws that have been made by the legislature. So this is such that we can guarantee good governance. Because once there is a connivance between the executive and the legislature, then you have what you call the tyranny of the few. We have few people. How many of them in government? Okay? And when that happens, when you have the tyranny of the few, then the majority, the masses of the people suffers because they can come up with all manner of obnoxious policies and laws which will be detrimental and injurious to the people. If you look at the currency redesign, I'm sure you can tell to what extent that inflicted pain on the people of this country. So this is exactly what happens. We need strong institutions and not strong individuals. But for us to have strong institutions, we must have citizens that are educated politically and are politically conscious to their civic responsibilities. Over.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what I will do is I will take the next two questions, and then after I'll take the last two questions because we're running out of time. So I'll take Samuel Dukomaya and Victor Balogun. Please ask your questions. We're not asking two questions, please, just one. Thank you, because we're running out of time.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Loud and
Hello.
clear.
All right. So my question is, looking at how the problem of godfatherism within political parties and how money is being used to as a vital tool to manipulate the interest of people or political parties members, is there any provision or like an oversight from the INEC or the Constitution of Nigeria whereby the activities of these people within the political parties can be monitored or can be checkmate? And also, for example, looking at how some parties during the last elections set some high amounts of figures for members to acquire the form for political offices, and which literally is unaffordable for most people that will be interested. Is there any provision within INEC or the constitutions that can checkmate all these activities from political parties?
Okay, thank you. I'll take Victor so that we can quickly.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you so much, sir, for delivering a very detailed lecture. My question is this: to what extent can we say political parties in Nigeria have ideology? Can we say that these catchphrases, for instance, consumption to production, is synonymous to ideology? Then this issue of jumping ship from decamping from one party to the other, and anything really be done to really address it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Avian, did you get those questions?
Okay, yes, I will start from the last question. The issue of jumping ships from one party to the other. Again, like I said, this largely has to do with having strong institutions. When you have strong institutions, then you can have a situation where some of these tendencies that we see are curbed. For instance, Every individual who is holding an elected office does so via the platform of a political party. Recall that during elections, it's the political parties that you have on the ballot, okay? So when those votes are cast during the election, it's for the party. So if you then jump ship from your party, ideally, you are supposed to lose that seat automatically. And this is what INEC can guarantee. It is within the purview of INEC to ensure that this is done. So there is a procedure. When once somebody jumps ships, especially within the legislature, for the executive, that is not so clear. But I hold so that both for the executive and the legislature, when once you jump ship, you are supposed to lose that seat. Okay? Now, within the legislative houses, when a member moves from a party to another party, his party that sponsored him into that seat can declare his seat vacant and make submissions to the leadership of the assembly, 1, and 2, to the party, and 3, and most importantly, to INEC. On the basis of that, that seat is supposed to be declared vacant because, and that member loses his position automatically because he was sponsored to that seat by a political party. He loses that seat. The party is supposed to be the one to then organize an election to have a candidate that will fill that position. These are things that INEC is supposed to guarantee. But then it is not happening because we need to begin to set examples or set precedents. You have situations where a lot of the people you have within the parties, within the legislative assemblies, have cross-carpeted from one party to the other, and none has been made to lose a seat. And that's why this is so rampant and keeps happening almost every so often. But if we begin to see institutions emerging stronger and are able to stand up to their responsibilities, we'll begin to have, such tendencies being curbed and have people stay within the party that sponsored them into the legislative assemblies, such that if you so want to vacate your membership of a political party, you can do that at the end of the term that you've been elected to serve. The only other precondition that that has been given as a basis for which a member may jump ship from a political party is when there is a division in the party, when there is a factionalization of the party. That's only when you can have persons jump, ship because of the crisis in the party. And the crisis is not just seeming crisis, established crisis, which may even result to litigations and all of that. If you remember when we had the, what we call the NPDP, that was in 2014, which was a breakout from the PDP, which was then the ruling party at the time. Such crisis can precipitate the basis for why certain members of the party who hold legislative seats may decamp from the party to other parties. But outside of that, every individual sponsored to a legislative seat in the Legislative Assembly ought to remain in that party until the term for which he or she has been elected is served. That's one. And then the issue of ideology. Yes, the buzz phrases that we hear are more like a summary of the ideologies of the party. Look, let me tell you, it is not also true that the political parties do not have ideologies. If you pick up the party constitution, you will see the ideologies of the party. However, like someone said, there are similarities in the ideologies of the party. It is not so clear as we seem to have in those days where you have, some sort of leftist ideology. And the leftist ideology are some of those ideologies that provides for a range of, political ideologies that support and seek to achieve social equality and egalitarianism within the political space, as opposed to the rightist ideology, which are more or less like, liberal ideology. And then you have those ones that are a little to the left and a little to the left, they are to the right, which are somewhat in the middle, either here or there. It doesn't really matter. So these are, what perhaps defined the ideological framework of the parties that existed around the First Republic, because they were very sharp divisions in terms of ideology. But today, if you look at the content of the party constitutions and manifestos, you find that there are some sort of similarity in the ideology. However, those ideologies have been summarized into the buzz phrases that you hear: New Hope, consumption to production, making Nigeria work. It's all an offshoot of the ideology of the party. And between you and I, if we pick the different constitutions of this or manifestos of this party, you will see that the content that leads or inspires the buzz phrases are also in the constitutions and manifestos of the other parties. Whether you're talking about agriculture, there's agriculture in NMPP's constitution, there's agriculture in in APC's constitution and manifesto. There is also agriculture in the constitution and manifesto, the manifesto of Labour Party and other parties. But you may find some bit of tweaking done in terms of how they intend to achieve their agricultural revolutions. That may just be the differences. So we cannot say, or I cannot say, that the political parties lack ideology. No, there are ideologies of the political parties, but there are similarities in the ideologies. That's from the last. The other part is the oversight. I've talked about this. I've provided a treatise to the issue of oversight. And I say that the constitutions of the political parties provide a wide framework for its oversight, for maintenance of orderliness within the party, for purposes of reconciliation, for purposes of mobilizing participation, for purposes of disciplining erring members of the party who have been adjudged to be in contravention of the provisions of the constitution of the party. Those oversight functions exist within the political parties. However, every political party exists in a space called Nigeria, and the space called Nigeria has a constitution, which is the ground norm, and that ground norm provided for the basis for which political parties are established. And the institution that have the powers to interpret the constitution is the courts, which is the judiciary. And that is why when matters escalate or go beyond the purview of the parties to handle, then they end up in the court, because it is the court that is regarded as the last hope of the common man, whether at the party or non-party level. So all of these are oversights, institutions that exist for the purposes of good governance and managing the operational imperatives of every political party. I hope I have addressed the questions of the first person, and of course, the last person as well. Thank you, and over.
Okay, we'll take the last question from Ekomobong.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I believe you can hear me.
Yes, you can hear you.
Thank you very much for such an insightful lecture. My question goes thus. Every political party exists in a space called Nigeria. And Nigeria as a sovereign nation is being governed by the constitution. And that same constitution that governs the rules of operations in Nigeria, in the preamble, gives room or makes provision for unity, justice, and fairness in the country. So when we look at the just concluded general election, the All Progressive Congress, the APC, fielded in for their presidential and vice presidential candidates two Muslims, a Muslim for the president and a Muslim for the vice president, which this caused a lot of rancor in the country, and a lot of Nigerians were clamoring against this. And we all know that this is against the preamble of the constitution and also against the preamble of the political party. So in these situations like this, how do we get this resolved? Building in two candidates from the same religion, which is against the preamble of the constitution and also the preamble of the constitution of a country, and also against the preamble of the political party. Thank you.
Thank you. The question of unity, justice, and fairness, and the question of federal character very much aligns. And it is on this basis that we have, in recent times, had a situation where you have a president. If you have a president that is a Muslim, you have a vice president that is a Christian, and all that, and so on. Yes, I agree that in fielding candidates for the positions of president and vice president who are of the same religion may be seen to be against the principle of fairness and equality in representation. But there is the other part, which is that the people at the end of the day determine who emerges in every election. Now, if indeed the question of representation is not served by a political party by fielding two candidates for the highest office who are of the same religion, it is also for the people, the citizens, to decide whether to go with that arrangement or not. For instance, in the June 12th election, which of course is regarded as one of the freest and fairest elections we've had in this country, we had a Muslim ticket. We had a Muslim ticket, and the people voted overwhelmingly for that ticket. However, a lot had happened from that time to date. A whole lot has happened, both in the manner in which the country has been governed, the manner in which political patronage has been offered, the manner in which appointments have been made, which of course had informed the thinking that for purpose of equitable balancing, there has to be a president, maybe of a different religion, and a vice president of another. But ultimately, like I said earlier, it is the people that decide who or where to vote for if they are truly dissatisfied with the option that have been provided for them. I'll tell you, the Tocqueville is a French political scientist, a poet and a writer. And his work, his research in the US had provided a basis for a very popular cliche by every political leadership in America. And it says that in every electioneering process, the people get the kind of government they deserve. So the people saw the option and they went for that option. So it is the people that determine. But if perhaps in that process something happened and the people do not feel that they substantially decided the emergence of that option that the people seem to be against, then there is another opportunity, which is the courts. And that is why today you have the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal to hear grievances arising from the electoral process. And I bet you some of these included in the litigations that you have before the petition tribunal is the issue of the Muslim ticket or same religion ticket. What am I trying to say? I'm saying that there are institutions already meant to hear such grievances. It is there. Where it has escaped the elections, then the petitions will then determine. In a situation where we have strong institutions and we have a fair system, it may not ordinarily matter. It may not matter whoever may emerge, whether you have a Muslim ticket or Christian ticket, as the case may be. It may not really matter if we have strong institutions, which means those strong institutions will ensure that there is balancing in other sections. I can tell you, I saw a newspaper publication this afternoon where the vice president-elect in the person of Kashim Shettima was alluded to have said that the Senate presidency, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, cannot both come from the same religion. That is coming from the vice president-elect, who is a beneficiary of same religion presidency. I'm sure you are hearing, you can get the drift. Okay, so your question is apt, very much in order. And it's also the thinking of a vice president-elect who is a beneficiary of the same question that you have asked this evening. But I'm saying that there is an institution that will address all of that, and which is the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. And that matter is part of the litigation that has been filed. I hope that addresses your concern. Thank you, Anova.
Thank you so much, sir. We had a question in the chat box, but I believe this your last summarization has sufficiently answered.
What kind of institution are we talking about? I'm talking about the institutions of government, from INEC, National Assembly, National Assembly, and other institutions that exist, the police, the army. All of these are institutions of government. If they are strong and independent, they will serve the good of the people. If they are biased and at the whims and caprices of the politicians, they will serve the interest of the few. And with this, I say thank you very much. And over to you, Adishola.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So at this juncture, we have come to the very end of the class on political parties and structure. It has been 1 hour plus, in fact, almost 2 hours of insightful lecture. And indeed, the answers to those questions were really insightful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Please let's express our thanks and appreciation to Dr. Ibiang Livinus for sharing of himself and his knowledge, his wide and vast expertise on this particular subject. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We hope that next go. Whilst some questions kept popping up, I forgot it became questions, but I realized that these questions were asked last cohort, and this is a fresh set of students. So we'll keep them coming, and we hope that you will join us again in the next cohort when we do call upon you. Thank you very much once.
Thank you.
So cohort XI, thank you, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you too.